A chemical attack on the Pentagon of the United States. Steven Crowder does a rape culture is a myth change my mind segment, and we're going to do some Bible stuff at the end here on the Arch Advocate podcast. Welcome back to the show. Now listen, a couple things have come to my attention that I am in a position, I didn't really realize this until yesterday. I was talking to one of the listeners of the show, and he had actually asked me, like, hey, listen, I'm a very busy guy, and I would like it if you could somehow, maybe put together a menu of, things that you saw on social media that you really liked, because I can't pay attention to everything. Now, listen, this is all I do, right? If I'm not podcasting, I'm preparing for a podcast. And that's pretty much it. And if I'm not doing one of those two things, I'm writing. And if I'm not doing one of those three things, then I'm playing with my kids, or my son. So I didn't really realize this, and I spent some time conceptualizing it, like, whoa, wait a minute. Nobody has the amount of time that you would need to listen to Joe Rogan and listen to Adam Carolla and listen to Jordan B. Peterson and listen to Dan Carlin and listen to the Jocko podcast. I have those luxuries because, I don't have a job that I go to. You know what I mean? I don't have 8 hours of my day that's allotted for somebody else. Like, all of my time belongs to me. So you know what? What I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting together just things that I believe are important for you to hear, right? And you can do whatever you want with that information. It just, I realize that there's going to be a great deal of bias, right? My own particular bias, but that can't be helped. You know what I mean? I'm just me, and I see the world through my eyes. I don't see it through your eyes. You know what I mean? But I think that, for you guys that write me consistently and have been in contact with me since last December, I think we got a pretty good feel for, what our palate will tolerate. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to start compiling things where it's like, look, if you don't have time for everything, right? And if you feel, if you're one of these people that feels like, man, I heard about this podcast and I heard it was great and I missed it, and now I'm going to listen to it, but I'm going to be kind of late to the conversation. Well, look, I'll just put together the things that happen in the sphere, and I'll put it in front of you, and I'll be judging these things based on whether I think it's funny, right? Like, Joe Rogan had the introduction to Sober October. What was it, yesterday? And he had Tom Segura and the other guy, and Bert Kreischer. Right now, I'm a fan of Owen Benjamin, and Bert Kreischer is kind of taken a back seat. He's basically gotten into the back seat with Harvey Weinstein. Right? He's allowing money and fame to alter his decisions on how faithful he is to his friends and that sort of thing. But whatever. I have not watched that podcast yet, but I'm sure it's hilarious, right? And if something's like really funny, I'll let you know. And if something's really deep and profound and relevant to the day, like I'll tell you about that. And if it's something that's deep and relevant to each one of our own, maturation process as men and even women, like Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, his things are almost exclusively like this is how you need to wake up and start bettering yourself and get out there and slay that dragon and that sort of thing. Nobody can consume all of that data. You know what I mean? We live in a world where we are constantly bombarded by content. There is no way you can keep up on it. So I think I'm going to create a blog and a segment on this show where I can periodically just condense it and say, hey man, I think you really need to listen to this. And by the way, anytime Dan Carlin produces anything, you're going to hear about it, right? Dan Carlin, he doesn't, his podcasts are long form, and it takes him weeks and weeks and months to produce them, right? Because he gets deep. So when his things come out on Hardcore History, it's like, I don't care what it's about. You need to listen to that guy. That guy loves history more than me, and I love history, right? That guy is on a whole nother level. And when he illuminates a period of history, it's like, man, it's so rich, and and if you want to understand like the days that we're living in, you have to understand the past. And Dan Carlin truly has a way of explaining, like, well, here's what actually happened, and he has his own particular flair, and I think it's wonderful. So just so you know, no matter what happens, when Dan Carlin produces something, I'm going to recommend to you that you go to his website and pay the $2 or $10 or whatever it is, and get that downloaded, because it's I see Dan Carlin's work as being vitally important. History, man. History is one of the necessary ingredients that you need if you want to be a predictor of the future. You know what I mean? You have to know the history. You have to know what people are capable of. You have to know what we've done in the past. So that's going to be a segment. Another thing, I'm going to be changing my Patreon up just a little bit. There's a service in there where you can create different levels with dollar amounts, and I'm going to create that. But I do not believe that it's going to affect any of you guys. All right, so I sent a message to a few of you, but I don't believe it's going to affect anybody who's currently a Patreon supporter, which leads me to my next point. If you want to support the show by becoming a Patreon member, you can do that on archadvocate.com, arch-advocate.com. You can become a Patreon member, or if you just want to throw some cash, just like on a one-time thing to support the show, you can do that with PayPal, and that is certainly appreciated as well. All right, now, one James Norman Mattis, often referred to as Mad Dog Mattis, which is actually a nickname that he hates, also known as the Warrior Monk. James Mattis received a parcel of mail yesterday that had ricin poison in it. Now, ricin is very deadly. You can kill a man with just a couple of grains of purified ricin. Ricin is, I'm not going to get into it, but it's very deadly poison, and some of it was sent to the Pentagon yesterday, and also to Ted Cruz's office. But one of the parcels of mail was sent to James Mattis, James Norman Mattis. Now, in hopes that because as I understand it, nobody has died, and that's my understanding. And God forgive me if somebody has, and I haven't brought attention to that, but. Just in the outside chance that the perpetrators of this particular crime should stumble upon my podcast, I would like to say to you, congratulations. Congratulations. You have now brought down a level of hell upon yourself that even I can't even imagine, right? I was aware of the Marine Corps' capability in the early 90s, all right? It has been, over 2 full decades. The art of war has evolved by 2 decades since I was last in it, all right? So the military nowadays is not the same military that I served in. It is way more advanced. There was no such thing as a drone when I served in the military. There was no drones. There's no such thing as a drone, right? For example, right now in the military, you can fire an anti-tank rocket off of your shoulder on a level piece of land, and that rocket will leave your shoulder, go across that land, and hit that tank and detonate, right? Now, you might say, well, yeah, Pete, that's everybody knows that. Well, what I'm trying to say is that technology did not exist when I was in the Marine Corps. You couldn't do that. You had to, back then, you had to send projectiles up and, do mathematics and, figure out how to get it to come back down upon that tank. You see what I'm saying? Back when I was in the Marine Corps, like night vision goggles did not have depth perception. Okay? When I was in the Marine Corps, when you wore your night vision goggles, there was no depth perception. And you'd have Marines tripping and falling all over, the training ground or the battlefield or whatever, because that's, well, they fixed that. All right. So what I'm saying is that the military in general, the Marine Corps, everything is way more advanced than when I served. And when I served, it was monstrous. When I served, we were, even at that time, the most powerful military in the history of the world, and we have become even more so that in those 20 plus years. To the perpetrators of this ricin attack, I would like to salute you and congratulate you, because now you have accomplished something that very few people in the world have ever experienced. You have the full attention of the United States military, the Department of Defense, and every single one of our law enforcement agencies. Osama bin Laden pulled that off, right? There's not very many people who command that level of attention to themselves. Like Osama bin Laden was one of them. The guys that coordinated the September 11th attacks. These kind of people. It is a very select club of men who have entered into that space, and whoever you are, you have entered that space. Congratulations. Because now you've got one James Norman Mattis, who, by the way, is in charge of all of that. Right? He is the Secretary of Defense. So for all intent and purpose, James Mattis owns everything in the military. Like, it's his. When he goes home and throws his keys on the counter, those keys are his. And those keys unlock the gates of hell. He owns them. Those satellites in space that are owned by the taxpayers, well, it's actually owned by one James Norman Mattis. He owns those. Those belong to him. Yes, I know. Right? It belongs to the taxpayers, but it's Mattis who runs them. Right now, that guy is in control of everything military related in the world. He is the Secretary of Defense, right? Of the Department of Defense. He's the god with the lowercase g of that department, or emperor, or president, or prime minister, or whatever, however it is that you want to conceptualize it. James Norman Mattis is in charge of all of that. And right now, you have his full attention. Congratulations. I want to point something out here. There's a quote by James Mattis, and I want to add some context to it. Because I think people hear this quote and they think, oh, that's really deep or kind of funny or whatever. And I just want to explain this to you. That in war, right, people die, and killing another human being is, in my opinion, and I can qualify this statement, but in my opinion, and in a lot of other people's opinions, killing another man is the most unnatural act that a human being can commit. It puts you in a very strange place, right? A very unfamiliar and strange land. And it is widely believed that's why we have so many people returning from war that have such pronounced cases of post-traumatic stress disorders, because they have taken a human life and they have not yet put that concept in their mind where it belongs. Right? They have not communicated with their God and talked about it with the Almighty. Right? They haven't come to terms with the fact that they have exterminated another human being's life. Right? It's a hell of a thing. It's a hell of a thing. And of all the warriors that I've met and that I've known, there's no truly such a thing amongst leveled thinkers that are warriors. That there's no bloodlust. They don't look forward to killing, but they are good at it, and they're good because they study, they read books about war, about battles, about the history of war. Like they're scholars, and they're good, but they don't take it lightly. And everybody that's ever been to the theater of battle, like we all know this about that particular concept. And so I'm going to read you a quote by James Norman Mattis. I've read it before once on this podcast, but I'm going to read it to you again. There is a cuss word in this quote, and so just it's not me cussing. It's James Norman Mattis. United States Marine Corps, 44 years, who said this. So let me read this to you, and I want you to understand this, that there is no part of this quote where he's trying to be funny, or he's trying to distract, but understanding what I just said about what it means to kill another man. This is where this quote, where the heart of this quote is coming from. Okay? Every single part of this quote is literal, right? So, taking what I just said and keeping that in mind, let me read to you this quote. James Mattis, and I quote, "I come in peace. I didn't bring artillery, but I'm pleading with you. With tears in my eyes, if you fuck with me, I'll kill you all." End quote. He's saying, I am pleading with you with tears in my eyes. Don't make me do this. I don't enjoy this. But if you make me do this, I assure you, you are all going to die, and then I'm going to have to go have another very long talk with my God. And by the way, my God, not a big fan of killing other people. It's a hard conversation and it takes a very long time. Please don't make me do this. But if it comes down to my family versus your family's got to go. That guy is in charge of the world's military right now. That guy. To you people that launched that attack of Rice and on the Pentagon, and on General James Mattis, congratulations. You have descended to a level of hell that even Dante could not imagine. You now have the full attention of all of the resources of the United States military and everything involved in the Department of Defense, including the satellites in space that can read license plates, right off of cars, right? Including the National Security Agency that is monitoring every phone call and every internet transaction. Everything that the FBI and the CIA, everything that they bring to the table. And then from there it gets worse, right? Every single person that ever left the Army or the Marine Corps and started their own paramilitary organization like Blackwater, or whatever Blackwater's called. I know Blackwater had to change their name for legal reasons, but believe me, there's way more than just Blackwater. There are many private armies in the United States. I say army, private militia. Blackwater was private militia. And there's many of those. And they're all registered. They're all legal, right? That's one of the things that our Second Amendment affords us, is you can have your own military. Did you know that at least in the 90s, I have not verified this fact recently, but I know for a fact that in the 90s, the largest Air Force in the world, Air Force, right? Guess who owned it? You might be thinking Israel. You might be thinking the United States. You might be thinking that those would be obvious. No. The largest air force in the world was owned by Ross Perot, a private citizen in Texas. I can't imagine that statistic has changed, but maybe it has. But either way, if it has changed, then it's, the way that you would properly say that is like, well, one of the largest air forces in the world is owned by private citizens. So what I'm trying to say, dear terrorist, who has now unleashed the gates of hell, every single one of the owners of those paramilitary organizations that owes James Mattis a favor, has any modicum of respect. These are devout Americans that own these paramilitary organizations. You're gonna have owners of those companies who don't owe James Mattis anything, and they're going to be calling the Pentagon today saying, how can I help? What do you need from me? Where do you need me? Just point the finger and give the word, and I will go. How can I help? These people that launched this ricin attack, I honestly don't believe we're going to ever hear about this again. I don't believe that these people are ever going to get their day in court. You just effed with the wrong Marine, as Jack Nicholson said in A Few Good Men. Boy, you just effed with the wrong Marine. I can't even imagine what is in those people's futures. But whatever it is, it's going to be long and painful and completely outside of the public eye, I would imagine. This is, boy, that's the wrong. Like, if you were going to do that, you should have done that during the Obama administration. Democrats love terrorists. They love them, man. They send them gigantic pallets of money. Not now. Donald Trump is the president of the United States, and James Mattis is ruling the world as far as it applies to the military. That is the wrong guy. So, oh boy, I've been thinking about this ever since yesterday when I heard about this. It's just like, boy, it just makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It's like, whoever these people are, God, your future is you're done. It's over for you. You're going to be found. And, furthermore, like, as this investigation goes on, right? Like, the first thing that these investigators are going to do is start tracking the money. Where did this rising come from? How was it delivered? Was there any chatter whatsoever anywhere in cyberspace? Like, you're going to be found. Nobody is smart enough to have the discipline to remind themselves, like, only, mouth to ear conversations, nothing, no digital record, no, paying for things with debit cards and credit cards and checks, whatever, cash only. Staying outside of the view of cameras and that sort of thing. I doubt it very much, right? Unless this was a CIA hit, and in which case, if that's the case, right? Like, if this was a professional job, you too are going to get found out. You know what I mean? And if we find out that there were politicians that were behind this, like, you see what I'm saying? Like, this is whoever is in charge of this. Like, if this was a hit from, the Clinton cartel, or Eric Holder, or John Brennan, any of these people, right? Bob Neller. Like, if any of you people, like, if you're the ones that called this hit in, I don't understand why that guy. You're gonna pick a fight with that guy, the warrior monk, the guy who stomped out ISIS in a matter of days. God help you. Just wow. I wish I was able to know. We're not going to be able to listen. There's no way that this is going to be followed on the news. There's no way. The investigation, everything, like this is going to be so quiet. You're never going to hear another peep out of this, right? And there are going to be people that are going to lose their lives because of this, and you're never going to hear about it. And those people's bodies will probably never turn up. Like this is going to be insane. You sent poison to James Norman Mattis, and you failed in your mission. Not smart. So yeah, again, congratulations, man. You've pulled off a very rare accomplishment, and that is you now have the full attention of the most advanced, most violent, most destructive force in the history of the world. In the history of all of mankind. What is it that atheists believe? 500 billion years of evolution. Guess what? It all is right now focused on you. Congratulations, man. That's not many men have pulled that one off. Anyways, Steven Crowder. All right, let's move on to happier times, shall we? Steven Crowder has a wonderful segment called Change My Mind. Right? He goes and he talks about various things like white privilege. White privilege is a myth. Change my mind. And he goes, he went in front of the White House, and I think it was Donald Trump is not a Nazi. Change my mind, or whatever, or a fascist, or whatever it was. And they're good because it's this is the thing I love about these segments is that it's news the way that I wish it was. I am always very, like when people say, oh, well, so-and-so came out with a poll and it looks like Hillary Clinton has a 90% chance of winning, right? Or whatever. Polls can be accurate, but the problem with polling people is that it all hinges on the people who answer those polls are the type of people who answer polls. Right? You've seen them. You've gone walking through the shopping mall with your family on a Saturday afternoon, and your kid wants to go to the Hot Topic or the Toys R Us or whatever, you know what I mean? And you've seen the lady or the dude with the clipboard asking people, hey, can you answer a few questions? Can you answer a few questions? And then you'll see one of those people and somebody's standing there asking or answering the questions. And, I always look at that and I think, like, what kind of person, how is it that you have so much time as an adult to stand there and answer questions? You must have a great deal of free time on your hands, and therefore, whatever it is that you're answering cannot possibly represent the population. You know what I mean? The populace. There's no way. Because the rest of us are like, dude, no, I can't answer your questions. Not because I don't think your questions are important or that me answering them is not important, but it's because, like, you see, I've got my kids here. My wife is here. We have stuff to do. I get, 2 days a week where I have to get caught up on my chores. I have to make sure that my children have proper footwear. I have to make sure that my kid's birthday is coming up, and I've got to, I have to buy some gifts, and I have to get them wrapped, and I have to do that, because if I don't, then I'm a piece of shit parent. I got to go do that. And then, when I'm done here, I have to fit in, like, I have to sit down with my friends, or else I'm going to morph into a weirdo, a recluse. So after I'm done with this thing in the mall, which I hate, by the way, I hate being in the mall. There's nothing I like about going to the mall. But then I've got to go over to my friend's house, which I do like, but it's kind of a pain in the ass, and we're going to barbecue, and I have to get over there on time so that I can sit down with my dude friends and I can talk about, the problems of being a dude and listen to his problems so that then, then I don't feel so all alone. And then after that, I've got to go home and make sure my kids are washed and their teeth are brushed and that they go to bed on time. And then tomorrow, Sunday, then I got to go to church. And church lets out at noon. And if I'm real lucky, I'm going to be able to catch the last half of the game. Right? Or whatever. Like, I got stuff I got to do, man. No, I'm not going to stand here and answer your stupid poll. I got things I got to do. And then when we see that person who's standing there answering the poll, it's like, what kind of person is that? So I don't like polls. And I don't like it when if I watch Tucker Carlson or if I'm watching, clips from CNN, it's like, oh, well, this poll said. Yeah. Yeah, polls are responded to by people who answer polls. I don't trust them. Right? But if I was able to have if I was able to see a long form conversation, and this is the problem that I have. Like, again, I love Tucker Carlson's show, but I have some serious problems with it. It's that same old model of, oh, here, we're going to bring, like when he brought in Michael Avenatti, who I hate, and I think he's a disgusting little rat. He's a rat. But the fact is like, look, if you're going to have that guy on, you need an hour. You can't be doing this thing where you just talk over one another. You sit him down, you ask him one question, and you just let him talk himself out. You let him talk himself until his voice starts getting raw. And then you respond with more questions. And you put him in his place and you say, look, if you're going to answer questions, you better learn to do it in short form. Yes or no, whatever. Because that whole segment where you just talked for 20 minutes straight, blasted out accusations and spoken hyperbole, we're going to edit all that out. You just talked for 20 minutes for nothing. But they don't do that. They sit there and they talk over one another. Nothing gets resolved, and it's a poor format. I don't like it. Nothing gets accomplished other than it just galvanizes my position of like, yeah, I think that Michael Avenatti is a scumbag. That's all you've accomplished. But, I don't get to see the crazy. I know that Michael Avenatti is crazy. I don't know why he's crazy. I can't see the components of his crazy. And if you would sit down for an hour instead of, the 4 minutes before the next commercial break, it would help me so that I can, later on in life, I'll be able to identify that particular brand of crazy. But thanks a lot, Tucker Carlson. Now I can't do that because you're beholden to whoever it is that owns Fox News. I don't appreciate that. But I still love Tucker Carlson. I'm just, Steven Crowder, on the other hand, he doesn't do that. He'll set up a table and say, I don't agree with you, but I'm here. If you want to come and change my mind, come do it. Bring me your, well-articulated points, your rationality and your reason, and I will hear you. And if you can change my mind, I'm open to it. And he'll sit down with these people for as long as they're willing to sit and talk. And he doesn't edit it, right? When these people are talking, he doesn't edit these people at all. You can hear everything. And one thing that I recommend to you is that you go and look at the Rape Culture is a Myth, Change My Mind segment. Because you get to see the crazy, right? Now, rape culture, it is a myth, right? Culture, that's the problem with that phrase. Like, obviously, rape happens in the United States, and it happens, anything more than 0 is a lot. Rape happens, and it's horrible and nightmarish, and all of that. But to say that we have a rape culture, well, then you're implying that we have a system of living life that's built into our law and our traditions that says, yes, rape is cool. And no, I don't agree with that. Rape is severely punished in the United States. In my opinion, not severe enough, but it's, if you get sent to prison, that's pretty severe for any amount of time. Because those rapists tend to get murdered in prison. But you can, to have a rational discussion about that, it's like, well, if you hadn't used the word culture, I would be more prone to listen to you. But you use the word culture. We actually have built into our culture, like if two men get into a fist fight, right? We have built into our law what's called mutual combat, right? So two men get into a fist fight, the cops show up, they arrest both men and throw them in jail, right? Then they go before the judge. And if both parties consent, they offer up their consent, and they say, you know what, Your Honor, like we were drinking, we were at a bar, there was a girl, whatever, there were some insults, and we got into a fist fight. Then the judge says, okay, well, this is a case of mutual combat. That means we had two men that decided they wanted to fight, and so they did. Case closed. Nothing to see here, folks, and they both go away. That is actually built into our law. So you could say we have a fist fight culture because it is built into our law. And furthermore, like if the cops didn't show up, you know what I mean? Like there wouldn't be people standing around weeks later going, man, we've got a violence culture, man. It's like everybody's in on it. Like we all understand that sometimes dudes, go to blows, put their dukes up, right? That is a cultural thing. It's written right into our law. That's a cultural thing, right? It's something that we all sort of understand, and that we, for the most part, we all kind of go along with. Like, all right, it's just two kids fighting, right? Like the analogy I used the other day. If your son is a teenager and the principal, you get a call from the principal's office, oh, your son was in a fight, you have to come down. You have to leave work, get up, come down to the school, we got to have a talk. And you go down and you see the two boys were fighting, it's like, all right, I'm going to have to, punish my son and have a discussion with him and, all that sort of thing. But ultimately it's like, well, the cops aren't going to get involved. This is a parent thing. This is a teaching moment. Like that is built into our culture. But if that same kid, like at the same high school, gets caught sexually assaulting a girl, yes, the cops are going to get involved, and we're all on board with that. We all see that as being a completely different scenario than two boys punching each other in the face. Make it a guy and a girl, where the guy is punching the girl in the face and groping her and or raping her, then we all automatically go to a place in our mind where it's like, okay, call the cops. Ruin that kid's life. Ruin that boy's life. We're all on board with that. Yes, he needs to be prosecuted. His life needs to be ruined forever. Because he beat up that girl and then was getting all rapey. Two different, you know what I mean? Two different scenarios, but they're very similar, right? One of them involves two boys and one of them involves a boy and a girl. Very similar circumstances, two completely different places that we go to in our mind when we hear about it, right? Hey, two boys got in a fist fight. One of, noses were broken and teeth were lost. Okay, I guess this is a teaching moment. Other scenario, changes by one factor. One of those boys is a girl. And all of a sudden, everybody, including the parent, well, not always, actually kind of rarely, but everybody involved, all the adults around that scenario, look at that and say, okay, that kid's life is over. We're going to prosecute him to the fullest extent of the law because we cannot have sociopaths running around raping people. We can't have that in our society. That is a cultural thing. So no, we do not have a rape culture. We have rape, and we have laws in place that forbid it, and we have laws in place that punish it, and we have the sociological response to it. So no, there is no rape culture. But I digress. I should not have gone so deep into that because I want you to watch this, and not for the reasons that you might think. See, when I see these things, I'm of the belief that it's like what I think is that I'm seeing the signal through the noise, right? And I'm sure there's a lot of people who see the same things that I see. But and so let me just say that when you watch this segment, I want you to watch and see the cultural problems that we're having right now. The first young lady that sits down and begins talking, when she is confronted with facts, not anecdotes, right? Because she has this anecdotal evidence of, well, because I was raped and my rapist is still on campus here walking around free. It's like, okay, well, you've said that, but you've not given us, did you file a police report? Did you go to court? Did you stand in front of a judge and say, that man assaulted me and raped me? Did you do that? You know what I mean? Like, there's none of that. When Steven Crowder brings up actual, like, well, the FBI says it's 1 out of 1,900 women are going to be raped. That's what the FBI says, according to their numbers. And she starts talking about, like, all of these, all of this anecdotal evidence, and Steven Crowder's like, but we're just talking about what we know from the people who are tasked with, finding out the truth about this, and this is what they say. And when her method of arguing, which involves no facts, no evidence, no nothing, when she realizes that it is not working, she immediately goes to the tears. And this is a manipulation tactic, because nobody wants to see a girl crying. Oh, girl, here, just stop crying. Here, if I give you some money, will you stop crying? You know what I mean? Like, no man wants to see. It's like kryptonite. No man wants to see a girl crying. And they know this. And that's, again, like, these women, they're killing women's liberation. Because when they get up there, it's called crocodile tears. Like, when you're crying but no tears are coming out, those are called crocodile tears. Because crocodiles don't have tear ducts. Crocodile tears. It's like, you're not crying. You're making crying noises, but no tears are coming out. You're not crying. And when you do that, every man that sees that says, okay, from now on, when a woman cries, I'm going to immediately dismiss it. Because you're just trying to pull my strings. That hurts women's causes. Right? When you cry wolf, that's what crocodile tears is. It's crying wolf. You're saying, look at me, look how sad I am. I must be being genuine because I'm crying. But it's like, no, there's no tears. And you're not crying because of the rape that you said happened. You're crying because you realize that your anecdotal evidence is not working. And you realize that you are having an allergic response to the actual facts. Here are the facts. Here is what the FBI says. Here is what the police reports say. And all of the combined knowledge that we have. And then you sit down and you try to give a philosophical response. It's like, we're not talking about philosophy here, people. We're talking about statistics and numbers and facts and investigation. And, there's people whose job it is to find out, well, how many people are getting raped. What can we do? And furthermore, when you go to college, they tell you, it used to be like 1 in 3 women are going to get raped. But now when you go to college, they say every woman in here is going to get raped at least 4 times before they leave college. It's like, okay, so you believe that there's a rape culture, and you believe that the hub, like the most egregious example of this rape culture that we live in, is college campuses. It's where all the rapes are happening. All the rapes. It's all happening on college campuses. And why do you continue to go into debt by $30,000 a year? You borrow that $30,000 and then you take it and you give it to the rape culture bosses, the colleges. If college is the apex, the highest, you know what I mean? It's like the priesthood of the rape culture. Why do you keep giving them tens of thousands of dollars a year? Why would you put yourself in where all the rapes happen if you were a woman? Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Why would you go to a place where all the rapes are happening? and then bemoan the fact that people are getting raped. Would it not be better? Like, could you not do your part to lower the rape statistics by avoiding the place where all the women are getting raped 4 times? Is anybody going to bring that fact up? Like, listen, you're saying there's a rape culture and that the worst place that all the rapes happen is on college campuses. Then would not at least a solution for consideration be stop giving tens of thousands of dollars to these colleges that are raping you and leaving you in debt? It's weird. So anyways, my point is, you need to watch Rape Culture is a Myth, Change My Mind segment by Steven Crowder on his show, Louder with Crowder, that it has been demonetized, no doubt. Now, real quick before I get into, actually, you know what, I'm going to do Bible stuff right now. Now listen, this passage of Scripture ties into 2 things I've already talked about, General James Mattis, and the idea of like recommending social media, YouTube videos and podcasts that I believe that you should make an effort to listen to. If you want sort of a menu of things that like I think like, look, nobody has enough time to consume it all, so I'll just put together a menu like, well, here's what I liked. You might I think you'll like it too. But also, I'm going to be opening. I had one of the original crypto creeps called in yesterday. He wrote me privately on Telegram. He said, "Hey, I'm kind of in a pickle here, and I need some advice. I need some outside advice." And so I gave him some. I spent some time with him on the phone. I'm not going to put his name out there, but spent some time with him on the phone. We had a good conversation, and I was able to sort of speak words of life into his situation, encouraging words, right? And I have a gift for that. That's something that I'm good at, and so I'm going to make myself available. Like, if you just need somebody to talk to, maybe you're going through something and you've got a problem that you're trying to work to its solution. Maybe you just need an outside voice, whatever it may sound like. I'm here for you, and I'm going to make that available on a regular basis. That was the opportunity that I was given yesterday, and I thought like, oh, okay, well, if I added some structure to this, I could talk with you guys one-on-one if you need it, right? And I wanted to share this one passage of Scripture with you because it's one of my personal favorites. Like, out of the entire Bible, this to me is one of the more profound moments in world history as it applies to me. Now, this is about probably my second favorite character in the Bible. His name is Caleb, of which I named my son after this particular character. Right? His name is Caleb, and now you know how the Jews walked through the desert for 40 years, right? Well, what actually happened was they came out of Egypt, right? They were chased by Pharaoh. The Red Sea was parted. They crossed it. They actually walked immediately to the Promised Land within a matter of days, a couple of weeks, actually, because it was, I think it's a 9-day walk, but, when you've got millions of, little Jewish people with you, it's going to take a little longer. So it was a couple of weeks, and they got there. They got to the Promised Land, and there were there was a tribe of people there that had already figured out metalworks, right? So they had gates, and they had built walls. So they'd already figured out like stonemasonry. They figured out metalworks. They knew how to make fences and gates and walls and whatever. They were very militarily advanced people. Now the Jews, on the other hand, had lived in slavery for 400 years. So they had no military understanding. They had no banking system. They had no, they were not a society that had anything to offer. No military skills, no, they knew how to build, but architecture was not their strong suit. All the architectural stuff was taken care of by the Egyptians, and the Jews would just build it. No military, no banking, no, you know what I mean? They had nothing. They had been slaves for 400 years. They were not an evolved people. Now, when they got to the promised land, there were these, I believe they were called the Amalekites. These people were about as militarily advanced as anybody on the planet. And not only that, but they were very large. Now, as you know, a lot of Jews, they tend to be short. They tend to be in the 5'6" range, right? They're short people. So pretty much to them, everybody's a giant. So these Amalekites, they were giants. They were large people that were militarily advanced, and they were sitting on this property that was beautiful. And Moses had sent these 12 spies. He took one person from each of the tribes, and he said, listen, you guys go into the land, just check everything out. Let us know what you find. Right? Is this a good land? Is there going to be food? Is there, what are are we going to get in a fight? You guys go look. And so these 12 guys went in at night, and they looked around, I think it was for a couple of days. And they came back, and when they came back, they had these gigantic clusters of grapes. If you've ever seen a grapevine, they're kind of sparse. You know what I mean? You get a cluster of grapes here, a cluster of grapes there. Well, this grapevine that they had was just full of grapes, right? So they brought it back as proof. Like, look, this land, food just grows everywhere. Look at all this food that we brought back. This is how it is everywhere, right? But only one guy was saying that. This guy was saying, look at all this food, man. I'm telling you, it's everywhere. Like, we're not going to have to worry about farming for a long time. There's just food everywhere, and there's honeycombs. There's because there's all this fruit. And wherever there's fruit, there's bees. There's honey everywhere. And there's sheep, and there's cattle, so there's milk everywhere. Like, there is food. We're not going to have to worry about food at all, guys. Let me tell you. Right? But the other 11 dudes, well, technically 10, there was this guy, Caleb, who was giving this wonderful report of how wonderful everything was, how much food was everywhere. Then there was a guy next to him, and he wasn't really saying anything at all. He kept his mouth shut. But the other 10 people, they were like, no, Moses, listen. There are giants in this land. These giants, they have swords made of metal. Right? Now keep in mind, this is 3,500 years ago. So having figured out like how to refine and create, things that are made out of metal, like that was Elon Musk. That was the same thing as like talking about going to Mars. You know what I mean? To those people, 'cause that was a brand new thing in the trajectory of human history. And these Amalekites had figured it out. They said, you don't understand, man. Not only is their city surrounded by a gigantic wall made out of stone, but the entrances of those walls are made out of metal gates. We're not going to be able to attack the city. Like, these people are way militarily advanced, and all we have are sticks and rocks. Right? It was scary. And these 10 men that had this scary report about how awful the promised land was, not only did they make that report to Moses, but they went out into the tribe and they started telling everybody else, guys, don't listen to Moses. Do not let Moses take us into this land because there's these giants and they will kill us. And all the people were like, oh, God, let's not go in there. And not Caleb, though. Caleb was walking around going, no. Like, yeah, what they said is true, but listen, look at these grapes. There's food everywhere, guys. No more eating manna every day. No more waiting on God to deliver, dead quail to us. No more Moses having to split a rock to get water for us. Like, there's just water and milk and honey and grapes and cows and sheep. There's just food everywhere. It's wonderful. It is what God has promised to us. It's ours. Caleb was 40 years old when he gave that report to Moses. He was already an old man in the standard of that day. He's 40 years old. But because the people were so afraid because of the report that the other men had given, they all pressured Moses into walking away, and that is why they had to walk around in the desert for 40 years. God said, listen, I need to drag you through the desert now. I need to purge this cowardice out of you, and it's going to require that every single one of you die. You will not see the promised land because of your cowardice, because of your fear. I've told you time and time and time again, fear not, neither be afraid, and you keep being afraid. So I'm sorry, but you're never going to see the promised land, but your children will. Because your children are going to grow up knowing me. Because by dragging you through the desert for 40 years until every last one of you is dead, all the people that are left alive will have spent their entire life trusting me. And that's what I want from you. I want you to trust me. And since you can't do that, I'm afraid you're going to live the rest of your life under my protection, but you're never going to see the promised land. Because in order to obtain the promised land, you're going to have to be courageous. And there's peace in expressing courage. And that's what the people are going to need. So that's what he did. For 40 years, God dragged the people of Israel through the desert until they were all dead. And only their children were left alive, except for Joshua and Caleb. Those were the only two. Well, there may have been others, but for the most part, everybody that was afraid and refused to go into the promised land, they all died. So this is 40 years later, and they come back to the promised land. But they didn't go directly to the Amalekites. They went and they started conquering other, smaller tribes, less advanced tribes. Right? Because in the 40 years in the desert, they had some fights, they had some battles and wars and whatever. There were other people that attacked them. Like, they had gotten a little bit stronger. So when they came back to the promised land, they went and they started taking land from, the tribes that they could defeat. And that took about 5 years. Right? So now this is 45 years after. Right? 40 years of walking through the desert. Then they come back to the promised land. Moses dies, and the Israelites cross the Jordan, and they go start taking over what is now Israel and Judea. Right? And for 5 years, the conquest of Israel was going on. It took 5 years, and they finally had defeated everybody and taken over all the land except for the Amalekites. They didn't want to fight those people because they knew it was a loser. They were not militarily prepared for that. They weren't big enough. They weren't strong enough. They didn't have the numbers. There was every reason that the Jews had to abstain from attacking the Amalekites. Right? Except for Caleb. Caleb was promised that day when Moses decided, okay, I guess we're going to go walking through the desert. God's telling me we're going to go for a walk in the desert. You people don't want to go into the promised land. I guess we're going to go for a long walk in the desert. He turned to Caleb and he said, this is what the Lord has told me about you. Everywhere that your foot walked on in these last few days as you were spying out the land, everywhere that you set foot is the portion of land that God has promised to you. And then they went for that 40-year walk. So Caleb had to wake up every single day listening to a bunch of whiny, bitchy, moany, cowardly little Jews. Right? Have you ever listened to a Jew complain? I've got a lot of Jewish friends. You ever listen to them complain? It's different than how other people complain. It's worse, right? That's what Caleb had to wake up to every single day, knowing that God himself had promised him this wonderful land of milk and honey. And every day he had to wake up knowing that that was his land, and the only thing that was keeping him from what was promised to him was these whiny, cowardly little bitches. 40 years waking up every day, going to sleep every night, listening to your neighbors as they complained about walking through the desert. They complained about the food. They complained about the there's never enough water. They stank. There was never enough water to bathe on a regular basis, so people's armpits and crotches and feet would get, they'd get real ripe, and Caleb had to smell that every day as a reminder that these assholes were the people that were keeping him from what was promised to him by God himself. 40 long years walking through the desert, knowing that he was being, delayed in his destiny because of these people who lacked the vision and the courage to seize what was theirs. 40 years goes by. They're all dead, thank God. But now Caleb's 80. He's an 80-year-old man. And Joshua is now the leader of the tribe. Right? Moses is dead, and Joshua is the high priest. Not high priest, but the guy in charge. What does Joshua do? Oh, he avoids that taking over of that land that was promised to Caleb. He says, no, we're not going to go fight those people. We'll die. So we're going to go pick on all these other little tribes that we can beat, right? Because of my understanding of human strength tells me that this is a sure thing, and if we go battle those people, they're going to kill us. So Caleb has to wait another 5 years, taking orders from Joshua and fighting battles to win the land for other tribes, for other people, for other families, these exact same families that had been keeping him from his destiny. He's got to go out and risk his life for these whiny, bitchy cowards. But he does so. He does so because it's Joshua. Joshua's in charge, and who am I to question? And whatever, I'm just gonna do it. And every time Joshua tells me it's time to go fight, I'm gonna go fight. And me and my sons, we're gonna go into the battle and we're gonna fight. 5 more years of doing that. And finally, at the very end, 45 years later from when God told Caleb at the age of 40, this is your land, it's yours. I have set this aside for you. They go to that. Joshua comes to Caleb. He says, Caleb, are you sure you want to fight these people? We could just leave them alone, right? We can have our little promised land. We could just let those people alone. And this is what Caleb says. This is the book of Joshua, chapter 14. I'm going to read from the top of the chapter. It says, these are the inheritances that the people of Israel received in the land of Canaan, which Eleazar the priest and Joshua the son of Nun and the heads of the fathers' houses of the tribes of the people of Israel gave them to inherit. Their inheritance was by lot, just as the Lord commanded by the hand of Moses, for the 9 1/2 tribes. For Moses had given an inheritance to the 2 1/2 tribes beyond the Jordan. But to the Levites he gave no inheritance among them. For the people of Joseph were 2 tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim, and no portion was given to the Levites in the land, but only cities to dwell in, with their pasture lands and for their livestock and for their substance. The people of Israel did as the Lord commanded Moses. They allotted the land. All right, so that's that 5-year process I was talking about, was that it had already been decided, what tribes were going to get what, and the Levites were exempt because Levites aren't allowed to own land because they are the priest class, and that's a different podcast. But here's the next verse. This is verse 6. It says, "Then the people of Judah came to Joshua at a place called Gilgal. And Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, said to him, 'You know what the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, in Kadesh Barnea, concerning you and me. I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land. And I brought him word again as it was in my heart to give it. But my brothers who went up with me made the heart of the people melt, like in fear. Yet I wholly followed the Lord my God. And Moses swore to me on that day, saying, Surely the land on which your foot has trodden shall be an inheritance for you and your children forever, because you have wholly followed the Lord my God. And now behold, the Lord has kept me alive, just as he said, these 45 years since that time the Lord spoke this word to Moses, while Israel walked in the wilderness. And now behold, I am this day 85 years old. I am still strong today as I was in the day that Moses sent me. My strength now is as my strength was then, for war, and for going into war, and for coming back. I'm going to pause right there because that's the part that always causes me to, it's goosebumps, right? If you're watching this on the YouTube, goosebumps. Every time I read that, it's goosebumps. You have to hear what he just said. Joshua comes to him and he says, Joshua goes to Caleb and he says, Caleb, look, let's not screw around here. You're an old ass man, all right? Those people are giants. They have walls and gates and metalworks and spears and swords and whatever. If you tell us that you want to go fight, just keep in mind we're going to lose and a bunch of us are going to die and you're not going to get your land anyways. So are you sure you want to fight? And Caleb says, Joshua, I'm 85 years old, and not only do I still go into battle every single time as an 85-year-old man, which is impressive by itself, but even more impressive is I still come back from battle. I go to battle, I kick everybody's ass, I kill all of my enemies, and then I come home at night. I am as strong today as I was then. I've been waiting for this my whole life, and that thing has been promised to me by God. So now give me this hill country of which the Lord spoke on that day, for you heard on that day how the Anakim were there. And Anakim is, we could get into that. The Anakim are this mythological large giant class of people, right? With great fortified cities. It may be that the Lord will be with me, and I shall drive them out just as the Lord said. Then Joshua blessed him, and he gave Hebron to Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, for an inheritance. Therefore Hebron became the inheritance of Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, to this day, because he wholly followed the Lord, the God of Israel. Now listen. There are things that are promised to you. There are things that are in your destiny that are guaranteed to you. But if you want to take ownership of those things, there's most likely going to be a fight that you cannot possibly win. Right? Caleb didn't stand a chance against the Amalekites. They were far more militarily superior. They were larger. They were better fighters. They were way more organized. Right? There was absolutely no reason to believe for Caleb that he could win, except one. There was only one reason to believe, and it was that God had told him that land was promised to him and his children and forever. Right? Now the thing is that it's a difference in perspective. Like, you have to see opportunity. Those 12 spies went into that land, and every one of them saw something different, and every one of them saw correctly. There were giants in that land. There were walls and gates and metalworks. There were giants. All of those things were true, right? And there were large grape clusters and bees that were pollinating those grapes and the fruit that grew on the ground, the watermelons and the gourds and the, whatever, the flowers. And those bees would pollinate, and they, and because there was such an abundance of food just growing right out of the ground, there was a lot of bees. Therefore, there was a lot of honey. There were sheep and rams and deer and, whatever. There were all of those things. And Caleb was looking around going, this is what God freed us from 400 years of slavery to inherit. This is ours. Guys, if God is with us, come on, let's fight. Let's go. Like, God has promised this to us. We're all going to get it. It's ours. Everybody of those 12 spies, they all did see correctly. Their vision was clear. None of those people lied. But some saw what they couldn't have, and one saw what they could have. And you have to be very careful about who you are in those scenarios. As I said, I was talking to a guy yesterday, and he said, listen, an opportunity has come my way, this thing that I've been working on for quite a while. I'm sure some of you are going to figure out who it is. I don't want to put your name out there, so it's just whatever. But I have this opportunity. It has come to me, but I have a friend who I think that would be better suited for the task. He knows more than I do, whatever. I know enough, but he knows more. I think that he would be better suited to the task. And I just said, look, maybe he is. And maybe you would be doing that company a disservice by not referring this work out to your friend. I don't know. But what I do know, according to your story, is that this particular opportunity has come to your feet. It has been given to you. I don't know why, but it has, according to you. Therefore, it is yours. That you must be responsible with it. This is yours. It has been granted to you. And the fact that you are capable of it, you are capable, and you are on a learning curve, right? Nobody's an expert, right? Nobody's ever finished learning and getting better. So it's like, well, yeah, I'm sure there's 1,000 people that are better than you at this, but you cannot escape the fact that this opportunity has come to you. You must be responsible with it. You are being tested, right? And if you want to refer it to your friend, then why not refer him to Elon Musk or Bill Gates or Jack Dorsey or a million other people who are way more technologically savvy and know more about this sort of thing? Well, I can't do that because I can't get a hold of it. Well, exactly. So I guess it doesn't really matter. I guess then the opportunity that is at your feet now belongs to you, and you must be responsible. And you must be courageous, and there will be a reward for expressing courage. And one of the most immediate rewards for living in your courage is going to be peace. Peace of mind, where you're sure. You may not be sure if you're the right guy for the job, but one thing is certain. When you express courage, when you step out into courage, boy, there's something that's just there's something in your DNA that's going to wake up and say, oh, this is right. This is right. This is a challenge, and I'm ready for this task. And if I screw up, I will correct. You know what I mean? And I will get better, and then I will be better suited. And you know what I mean? Then you get to enter the promised land. It's like I just a personal story. Just a couple of years ago, I was in Santa Barbara and I was at church, and then we went out for tacos later at this place called Lily's. I think they're in Isla Vista. They're in Santa Barbara. God, I miss tacos. But after we were done, there was like 5 of us. We all went out into the parking lot, figuring out what we were going to do next. And I looked down. There's a wallet. Right in front of God and everybody. It's just a wallet sitting, a lady's wallet, like one of those long ones. And I picked it up. I said, guys, like, look at this wallet, just so everybody can look. Like, I'm going to open it up so that I can, find an ID. I just want everybody to witness this so nobody thinks I'm shady and I'm stealing. I open it up. There's $300 in there. And a Mexican lady, driver's license or ID card, California ID. And I said, oh God, what do I do? Should I call the police? And everybody there, these are church-going folks, mind you, they all said, no way should you call the police because they'll take the money out of there. I was like, really? They're like, oh yeah. Like in Isla Vista, because of the university, right? They're like, this is common. If they find a wallet, they're going to extract their toll. I said, oh, that's terrible. And I said, well, maybe I should just give it to the taco place. And they're like, you don't know that she was shopping at the taco place. What, you don't have any reason to believe that she will come back to the taco place looking for a wallet. I was like, okay, good point. So here's what I did do. I wrote down my name and my phone number, and I walked into the taco place with the ID, and I handed it to the guy, and I said, look, if this lady comes in here, you have to give this to her and tell her I have her wallet, right? She can call me. The point of this, and by the way, she did call me a couple hours later, and I was able to, and she didn't speak a lick of English, by the way, and when I gave her her wallet, like, she was sobbing, just crying. She was like, this money is like, this is all the money I have for the next 2 weeks, and whatever. I had a translator there, because we were at a farmer's market, long story, but, the point I was, and I'm sorry to be such a narcissist where I told you what an awesome dude I am, but the moral of that story is this, is like, you know what? God didn't give that lost wallet to the police, nor did he give the responsibility of that lost wallet to the taco shop owner, nor did he give the responsibility of that lost wallet to anybody but me. That wallet was at my feet. I found it. That responsibility was placed on me. God put me in charge of that situation. It was then my responsibility to act responsibly, to act in a manner that would be pleasing in the eyes of my God. And in that particular scenario, I think I stuck the landing. Now, I have other stories where I did the exact opposite. And you will read about that in my book, where I was given tests and I failed miserably. And I'm not ashamed to tell you those stories either, because it's like, you know what? Like, dude, it's trial and error, baby. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not proud of some of the things that I've done. I will share some of those things with you. And I will also share some of the things that I am proud of. But anyways, the point is like, look, you have to keep fighting. And you have to keep believing. You have to keep knowing. Right? There are things that are guaranteed to you by the Almighty himself. They are yours, and you're going to have to fight for them. And you might have to put up with a bunch of whiny, bitchy cowards. You might have to push through that. And you might have to do it for 45 years as you walk through the dry and bitter desert. But on that day, when it's time to fight, we go back to Caleb, standing there saying, you son of a bitch, I'm 85 years old, I still go to battle, and I still come back from battle. That land is mine, I'm going to take it. That's who I named my son after. Thank you for listening to the show. There is going to be a second episode today, a cryptocurrently podcast episode. I'm going to publish that along with this episode. This is my conversation with Dan Morin. And he is a professor of coding and blockchain technology and all that stuff down there in Guatemala. It's a little hard to understand. He's a French Canadian, so he's got a bit of an accent. But just, if you can kind of tune in. And by the way, I apologize. The audio leaves a little bit to be desired. But if you can power through it, I hope you like it. And by the way, for you, the original cryptocurrency fans, the crypto creeps, I've not taken my eye off of cryptocurrencies. All right, I've got my eye on it, and I'm waiting for some normalcy to come into that market, and we'll start talking more about that as time goes on. God bless you guys. Enjoy the show. Enjoy part 2 of my conversation with Mr. Morin, Professor Morin, and we will talk to you on the flippity flop. Bye.